Welcome back to the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast. We have a fun, unique episode today. We are in the now desolate, abandoned studio of Doug Boehm at the Banana Factory.
You better believe it. We're here with a little bit of an echo.
Yeah. So if you hear an echo, that's why. There's nothing breaking the sound around here. We're in a big empty room looking at a beautiful painted wall that was built up over the course of many, many years. Well, guys, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Doug Boehm and Josh Berk, who in the past year or so have started a new project called Planet Infamy. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the studio and hear the exciting nature of more artists in the Valley collaborating.
Planet Infamy is an art rock collective of Lehigh Valley musicians playing innovative original compositions and irreverent improvised jams. The group features Josh Berk and Bryan Lazewski on guitar, Doug Boehm on bass, Big Dom Haberstumpf on drums, Shaun Adickes on keyboards, and Al Johnson on percussion, with many other talented instrumentalists joining in the jam from time to time. Berk says of their lyrics, "I like to write songs with equal parts heartbreak and humor." They draw inspiration from experimental rock forefathers like Frank Zappa, the Grateful Dead, Ween, and the Flaming Lips. Each Planet Infamy show is a one-of-a-kind experience.
Doug, tell me a little bit more about this space. What has it been like being in this space for as long as you have, and what's it like seeing it empty now?
Sure. So actually, this is the second empty studio I've had here at the Banana Factory. I've been in the building for 7 years, and during the pandemic, a few artists had moved out, and I had this opportunity to take a larger studio. My previous studio was a bit smaller down the hallway, and I knew I was going to be here quite a bit, so I decided to move into a much bigger space, and it's kind of private. It's kind of tucked around the corner, kind of hidden from a lot of the other studios, and it's been a great space. Has great windows, so being here during the day is certainly a pleasure. Being here at night when I'm typically painting, also, I had shelving set up with specific lighting. Overall, it's just been a wonderful space to not only paint in, and then of course during the pandemic I started playing bass again. Towards the end we had a full drum set here, certainly jamming a whole lot, and I made a bunch of posters in this space as well. Used to bring my kids here. I actually have very fond memories, and when I told my son that I was moving out, he said, "Oh gosh, that's such a bummer, you have to move out." And when I brought him here, he saw it empty, and he told me that some of his core childhood memories are spent at the Banana Factory.
Wow.
So 7 years ago, he was a little boy. I used to bring him here all the time into my old studio and this studio as well.
Yeah.
And so it's a bit emotional actually. I didn't think I would feel as emotional as I am about the space, but a lot of creative energy was spent here and released. So,
yeah. Josh, what is your earliest memory of being in this space?
Being in Doug's studio? Yeah. It's funny because I actually met Doug through his son, who was like a teenager at the time, and also now. Yeah. But I was teaching writing classes here at the Banana Factory as like visiting artist in the literary arts. They started to do some of that, expanding the after-school Art Smart program to include some non-visual arts, and I was one of the folks who came in to do that. I taught writing, and then I did a summer camp here, and then one of my students was Wyatt, was Doug's son, and then we were doing some writing project in one of the rooms downstairs, and we started talking about writing songs. I think I mentioned that I was a musician as well, and I said, "Oh, I have my guitar upstairs," and then I was like, slightly confused, but then I realized it's because his dad's studio was up here, and they had all sorts of stuff up here. So I think that's when Wyatt brought me up, and that's when I met Doug. So it was just everyone who walked in here, it was just such a cool space. Doug's paintings are so dynamic and colorful, and sort of like just striking and fun, and it was just such a cool thing to walk into. And then he also had all these guitars, some that were like for playing and some that were art projects. Doug did these like, he used guitars as his canvas for a project kind of. And those were so cool to me as like, you know, a musician and just like, I don't know, guitars were always cool. And then to see what he did with them and turn them into an art piece was awesome. And so then, you know, that was, I think, you know, Doug was just showing me his equipment, and we were like, I was explaining what I play and stuff, and we just sort of hit it off right then. And then, and then before long, Doug had a couple of different folks here who were like jamming on either on First Fridays or just other times, and invited me to come sit in. We have a bunch of friends in common, so it was kind of weird that we hadn't met before, if you think about it. We both went to the same high school. We went to Freedom, just a couple of years apart. We know a ton of the same people. We've both been in like the same artsy Bethlehem circles forever, but it took like that thing with his son for me to actually make the connection with Doug. And it was such a cool space to move into, and for all the reasons Doug mentioned and more.
Very cool. Now, Doug, your studio is no stranger to music. It's been, I feel, every time I've come around the Banana Factory, there's been some kind of musical sounds emanating from the walls of your studio.
Yeah. Well, you know, I didn't play any kind of music. I didn't play bass for 10 years. After my twins were born, I really had very little time. I was still painting and you know, working on creative things. I just wasn't playing bass. Sure. I would pick up a guitar every now and then, my acoustic guitar, and play some things for my kids. But during the pandemic, I was certainly inspired to start playing again and start jamming with other people. And after after First Friday started to kick back in, when places were allowed to be open again, that's when I felt like we need to get more energy here, right? So I just started having jam sessions. Every First Friday, hey, stop in, we'll have a jam, you know. Certainly various musicians, I had a couple different drummers sit in, a couple different guitarists, and then met Josh, and we just started, you know, he started showing up to these First Friday jams as well, and a lot of those jams turned into Planet Infamy jams, really, Planet Infamy songs. I thought I was going to get in trouble for some reason. I'm like, can I do this? Can I have these like jam sessions during First Friday? But because my studio is like tucked around the corner, a lot of people didn't even realize it was part of First Friday, like that my studio was part of the other area. And a lot of times people would walk down and be like, I didn't even realize that there was a studio down here. And then they would see the art or hear the music. It was a way of just bringing people in down the hallway, based on the fact that I feel like First Fridays, the attendance dropped off a bit, you know, initially. Yeah. And now, you know, of course, people are stopping in First Fridays. But yeah, First Friday jam sessions were always kind of kept it more alive.
Yeah. I think live music has a really interesting way in building community.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to hear just about the role of live music and community for both of you guys, because, you know, Planet Infamy is not your first forays into music, so I want to hear about that.
Yes, it feels like how I know most of my friends is like we're in a band together at some point. That's almost everybody I know, and I don't know what exactly it is other than that you know, it can be the simplest thing in the world, but if you just start strumming something and then somebody strums along with you and you hit a note that sounds good together, you just get this connection that just feels so good. Like it just is such a natural like good feeling. So when we, you know, when I am like hanging out with someone, sometimes like it comes up later that we're both musicians, or sometimes that's like the way we meet first. And like during the First Fridays, whenever it was, I do feel like everyone in sort of who would hear it would have to stick their head in. Like if you hear live music, you just got to go stick your head in and see what's happening. So it just draws people in. It just brings people together. And like, you know, some of the people who came through here like really are some of the best musicians in the Valley. I think I've been like part of these jams. Like Eric Santana's a friend of ours, and he's like phenomenal guitar player who sat in with us sometimes. Wyatt and Cody Aberchinsky, who are twins, and Cody they both had a space here at the Banana Factory for a time, and they're both like phenomenal musicians. And then Al, who is a visual artist here, would come and play drums.
Yeah, Al actually got me kind of back into playing again. He played djembe, and the one day I was in a studio, he was playing. I'm like, oh man, I play bass. We should just do this like real easy bass drum kind of thing. And so I brought my bass in, and we just started jamming. And it was like the hook. I'm like, yeah, this feels good. So Al, certainly Ken Burak, we would jam as well. A guy named Ben Lee stopped in, a percussionist. It was just a lot of different people stopping in, and just again, like we weren't playing other people's music. It was just improvised jams. It was like one of the biggest pleasures in music, just kind of going for it. So yeah,
that's super cool. And that Al is Al Johnson.
Yes.
Yeah,
awesome.
Al Johnson, who is a very like a force to be reckoned with as a visual artist. Also, like really, really awesome visual artist, and also just awesome on the drums. Like he was so fun to add him into our mix. So yeah. And then some of our other friends, like some of my friends just literally in my neighborhood happened, like our buddy Dom Haberstumpf, who plays drums. Our kids grew up together. Dom was like my son's football coach, and our daughters are the same age. And, he's like the same age as us. And to the point, I mentioned that because like when you have little kids, you do kind of get away from this kind of stuff a little bit as you focus on these other things. And so I keep saying that like once our kids like got to be teens, it sort of became like our second adolescence because you just like a little more time and just like a little more time to just like, I don't know. I feel like less worried about being judged in a way. Like I just felt like when my kids were little, I felt like I had to be like the school dad, I had to be a certain way. And then now it's just like, I'm just gonna be weird again. And my kids don't care. And like, I really feel like a teenager again. And I'm just playing in bands with all my friends. And like, and then Bryan, Lazewski, who is also like in our neighborhood, our kids are the same age, is a phenomenal guitarist. He's also a pilot. So he's literally out of the country like half the time. But it's like, no one cares. We're just like, when you're around, just drop in like and just plug in. And he's the kind of musician who can just hear 4 bars of what you're playing and then play something over it that sounds like he's practiced it a million times because he's just so good and such a good... Not everyone can improvise, really. Not everyone can just like hear a thing and just play with it. But that's like what's kind of great about this group of people. I don't know if it's because maybe we're all a little older or just the personalities that have happened to come together, that we all really like the sort of free-flowing, like even the songs that are written and recorded. I really feel like we've never played one the same way twice. They're always at least a little different. Yeah. And I like that though. It's less like memorizing a script and more like creating on the fly. And that's, we're not like, we're not like jazz virtuosos, but we do love to like improvise on the fly and play off one another. And like, that's like really, that's that feeling of creative energy and of just, community connection, like just getting together and making something up that none of you would have made up on your own is just a really cool thing.
Yeah, we've been in situations where I started playing a song as I thought it was going to be. And then we played the entire song at the end. Someone was like, what song was that? Like, do you just make it up? I'm like, no, that's one of our Planet Infamy songs. We've played like 20 some times already. But it had a different vibe to it, like it's interesting how you can almost take the same bass line and do a lot of different things with it.
Oh yeah.
And it has a completely different tone to it. But in terms of community and the communal nature of music, my art process is totally different. It's very solitary. When I'm painting, I'm typically alone. I've certainly painted with other artists or drawn or passed paintings back and forth where, certainly have done plenty like Exquisite Corpses before where you fold the paper in thirds and all that. But it's definitely, it's very different. So, as an illustrator and as an artist, I've lived kind of a solitary, creative process But music is so collaborative, and it's one of those things where, since I did take a break from it, coming back to it, it's all I can think about. When we're jamming, I'm so focused on that moment.
Yeah.
Which, I've been painting for so long that I can think about what I had for breakfast. Right? When you're jamming, it's all about just experiencing the moment, and it's really for me, a very pure creative endeavor. Really, it's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I know both of you are working in multiple mediums. Though you just talked about painting. I know, Josh, that you also do writing and many, many other things. So what role and what way has identifying more as a musician impacted your other practices?
It's funny because my story is actually really similar because writing is very solitary.
Yeah.
And the main way it's impacted is that I want to do that one less because playing music is fun. Like you're hanging out with your friends.
Yes, of course.
And like writing is sometimes fun, but not, it's usually it's work and it's lonely business. And, you
get in your own head a lot,
get in your own head, and the music gets you out of your head and gets you into a group. And then it's also sometimes kind of hard to promote yourself as a solo person, I find. But it's just like, hey, it's like the band. It's like we're a gang. We're like a group. We're like, there's a strength in those numbers. And also, for whatever reason, music, I think, has a little bit less gatekeeping. Like you don't have to get a publisher to publish your work. You don't have to get a gallery to accept your painting. You're just a bunch of guys who plug in, write a song, and then we're like, nah, let's just play this somewhere. And you'll find a stage and someone will put you on it, and then the circle is complete. So the whole process from creation to performance is under your control, and it's fun from beginning to end.
Yeah.
So it's really it's not I still do like to write, and there's a certain type of myself that is created through that solitary thing, but there's just nothing like it. It's just so much more. It's honestly just fun. Just making music and being in a rock band is just fun. And I'm at a point in my life where I'm not gonna ever think about making money off of it. I don't have any crazy goals. I just want to do it because it's fun. And there's no one can stop me.
Is there a moment for either of you, both of you, or that you guys have discussed as a unit or band that it went from being a collection of musicians who were doing free-form stuff to this is now a project with a name and we're doing this?
In terms of the moment, it's actually funny. We're talking about Planet Infamy as it relates to my studio here, because a lot of the songs were developed in this space, but we actually jammed at the library for the first time. Or at least you, me, and Dom got together at the library together.
The library studio has had that role for a lot of other people too, which is something. Obviously, I'm the library director. That's my day job, and that studio is one of my babies. And I talk to people from friends of mine who live elsewhere about putting bands together and stuff. And I realized one of the hardest things really is it's weird to invite someone you don't know that well to your house.
Oh, right. Yeah,
to play
true.
music. And
True.
And so having they call them third spaces, having a space like that is so great. And so the library can be that. You can just let's meet there. It's not as it's not as awkward. It's not as stressful. It's just more. And then
walk through my living room and step over the
I gotta do all my
litter
laundry.
box.
Yeah,
and we'll go down to the basement.
Do the dishes, and I gotta worry about my dogs, and my kids are gonna be annoyed that I'm being loud again. And the Banana Factory, same thing. It was a sort of easier way for Doug just to open up to people and just say, hey, come by, and jam.
And I've made a lot of friends by way of having the third space. Just, people come in and it's a creative space. It's 100% creative. Again, you're not dealing with other family stuff or what have you. But I do feel in terms of, for me, the moment that kind of my eyes opened around, maybe we can start a band. I actually didn't really even want to start a band necessarily. I thought we'll just jam every time. It'll just be, there's no pressure, no pressure to practice. You just kind of show up and we create something together. and it's this original thing that we just made. So I still like that, and we still do plenty of that. Like every time we have a jam session, there's like at least 3 jams are like that could turn into something, you know?
Yeah.
But the one day, like Josh had mentioned, I used to have different musicians stop in, but I think there was a day where it was just like Josh, Dom, and I, and maybe Shaun was there as well.
We haven't mentioned Shaun once.
We didn't mention Shaun, and Shaun is like...
Shaun's one of the core...
Infamy. Yes. So Shaun plays keyboard in Planet Infamy, and him and I tried starting a different band.
Because he's also a really good drummer.
Yeah, so he used to play with me. That actually fizzled out. It wasn't like the right chemistry. So we found the right chemistry with Planet Infamy, and the one day we were jamming, and it was like very kind of early on, and I played a bass line. And then all of a sudden, Josh like gets all these lyrics out. I'm like, what? And he just starts singing, you know? like I don't know. I just didn't expect it. I thought we were just going to do some instrumental stuff. And, you know, I think it was Edelman. I think that was the song that was like the first time I'm like, that sounds like a legit song to me. But the plan isn't to create these like really tight songs that we have to like abide by when we perform live. It's just creating a basis for us all to connect on, and then to Josh's point, like it's totally different every time. The length of the songs, it might be a 7-minute song sometimes it's 15 minutes, depending on who's there as well. I feel like sometimes we might play as a trio, just Dom, Josh, and I, and I feel like the songs are maybe a little bit shorter. We don't jam out as much. And
I'm not as good at playing lead guitar as Bryan. That's mainly why.
Then you bring Bryan in. Next thing you know,
he's just really good.
It's taking it off into a different direction. So, yeah, I think that was the moment for me where I felt like it feels like a band more than a music project.
Yeah, I always have these lyrics. Like, I think unlike other songwriters, maybe a lot of times I write lyrics without any idea for the music in mind at all. I'll have like a rhythm in my head, and I'll just write stanzas. Sometimes almost like compulsively, like way more than you would need for a song. Just for whatever reason, I just get these like things stuck in my head. I've kind of always been writing stuff down, from be it, you know, poems to phrases to songs to books, you know? And I just have this giant file in it's a Google Docs where I just type endless lyrics. And what's one of my favorite things to do is like hear some music and then try to fit my lyrics to it. I do that with Tom in my other band, Fictional Name. He'll write guitar music, and I'll just be like, oh, let me see if I can find a song. Or I'll just listen to the music and just see the rhythm that'll fit. And so, yeah, when Doug started playing some of these bass lines, I was like, I think I have stanzas that fit really perfectly with these. So, and then, sometimes you got to adjust it on the fly. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does. But usually, like, if the band strikes up something cool sounding, I'll be able to like find at least a couple of phrases, lines, lyrics, something that will like fit with it. So, the band has to be like flexible enough to like just sort of groove with it and be attentive enough like listeners to like adjust it on the fly to like make it be into a song. So that is one of the things about like chemistry. Like besides the fact that we all just get along really well, like everyone in this band is like a really good listener. And like I know guys who are really good players but not great listeners. And like that's okay. I mean, whatever. That's just maybe they grew up playing solo a lot, or maybe they come from a different, maybe if you grew up playing, say, like classical piano or something, like there's a right way to play it, and that's the way you play it. And none of us are like that. We're the opposite of that. We're very like unschooled and unstructured, but good listeners. And so we always like really hear each other's, like, what we're putting out, and we're able to like adjust on the fly and like find some really like collaborative moments. And I think it's one of the other cool things about being in a band, like in your 40s, is like, no one's like really like, no one has a big ego. Like at least we're not out there like trying to be like, I need a guitar solo. Like you got to turn down. Like I need more like this. I make sure like we use my lyrics on this song. Like no one cares. Like it's very collaborative. We're all just like happy to be making something cool together.
There's some times when, right now we have a bunch of songs, so I do understand when Josh is going to come in to start singing, but sometimes I don't. So even that, like the indicator, like I might just pull back on my playing or just kind of like soften, and just kind of let that dynamic kind of play out, and then I'm anticipating the end of the first chorus, and then we're going to kind of speed up a bit. And Dom and I think Dom and I have really good chemistry together as the rhythm section, so like I'll be watching him or he'll watch me, and he gets a sense that now we'll slow down, and that way we hear the guitars a little bit more.
Yeah, Dom's great. You can just give him a look, and like he knows exactly what I make, like what one eyebrow means or what like a head nod means.
Yeah,
and
that's really interesting, and I think different genres or backgrounds of music deal with improvisation in very different ways. Like jazz is very competitive. Like when you take over a solo, you are quite literally cutting someone off. But on the contrary to that, when you have something like blues, it very much so is, all right, I'm going to give you the space, I'm going to look for the signal, and you're going to go off and do that. With bringing up different types of music and those different backgrounds, what are the backgrounds of the musicians in the band? What does that look like for you guys?
Well, I'll just mention the fact that I have almost always been in like fairly stripped down, simple like garage punk bands. And Bryan has always been interested in like Grateful Dead kind of like improvisational or like Fish, like jam bands, and like Bryan has a huge musical palette, but he really likes improvisation, like long like guitar solos, and I've always most of the bands I played in sound like the Ramones. Like there's zero solos, like not even an option. And so for me, I've really been like just expanding my type of playing by connecting with him, and then. Doug, I mean, I'm sure you can say what your musical background is.
Yeah,
I can also say what I think it is.
Sure, go ahead.
Because Doug is like somewhat similar in that he was kind of like a teenage metalhead who played like a lot of like heavy music, and then as he got older and got more skilled at the instrument, and just sort of his tastes have really broadened also, and he plays like a really interesting range of like funk and rock, and he can get heavy, but he can get groovy.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I actually don't even really consider myself to be a musician. I'm an artist, sensitive, creative type that happened to pick playing bass as part of the voice of something that I'm trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. I started playing guitar maybe when I was 16, and it was all heavy metals. Like everything that I would learn was heavy metal. Everything that I would write would be more of a heavier vibe. And then after college, after I went to art school, when I got out, I started playing bass because I always felt like I should have always been playing bass. But because I bought a guitar at the time when I was 15 or 16, I felt like committed to like, this is what I have. And I didn't have a lot of, I have no musicians in my family. So it was a bit odd for me to even be picking it up. But I picked up a bass after I got out of college. And I just kind of naturally, I feel like, I like to slap, I like to play with fingers, I like to play with a pick. And I feel like because of a lot of the music that I enjoy, I think the big, inspiration for me is, although I mentioned that painting is solitary, I would always be listening to music, always. That would be the big common thing between, my art practice and music. The music kind of ties into it pretty well. But of course I love Primus. I love, funk music. I started branching out outside of metal, the moment that I picked up a bass. And so I do feel like my playing style is kind of hard rock, funk, but I have interest in other music at this point, where I was telling you earlier that I felt like some of the more recent stuff that I'm writing almost has like a Motown kind of vibe to it, or R&B kind of sound to it. So, yeah. But then the other band members, of course, we have Shaun in the mix. We mentioned he's a drummer, plays keyboard as well. he actually wanted to play keyboard in the original band that we were starting. I'm like, but I need a drummer. But when I asked him to come play with us, he was so thrilled. I'm like, you get to play keyboard, you know? And he has a lot of interest in jam bands, you know, like any of the jam bands that we've been talking about.
Or like Allman Brothers maybe? Or
Allman Brothers for
like
sure.
I think of Shaun as like from the 70s.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
in a good way.
sound.
Like he seems like, and his whole vibe, he seems like a 70s, like, like he could have been in the Allman Brothers, or he could have been in like Crazy Horse, or like some of those cool 70s guitar bands with keyboard parts. So, and he's got a good sense of humor and like a good sense of experimentation and all that kind of stuff too. And then, Dom's a really like, I think he grew up listening to a lot of the same kind of like hard rock, like indie rock, like kind of stuff that when me and Dom first started playing together, we basically just played like punk songs that we both knew. That was just like, and then the more we started playing together, the more we got older, and like we were just like, oh, do you also like this kind of stuff? Like we just realized we had like I think all of us have like really broad musical interests. Like we'll just kick around songs or artists that we like, and it's a huge range of stuff. So it's it's all from some kind of rock and roll background, but that can be mean a huge number of things. And like I feel like anytime any of us wants to go to some place, the rest of us are all like on board. So
very cool. Doug and I were talking a little bit before the recording, and I said when I listened to the EP, in a lot of ways, I heard a chemistry that sounded similar to King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Oh, nice.
Where it's just a ton of musicians from different backgrounds who just come together and they're like, yeah, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it pretty selflessly and allow everyone to have a great time.
That's a great compliment. That sounds really, that's the vibe.
Yeah. And not necessarily in sound, but just in spirit, and that idea of collaboration.
And their sound, right? They'll go to all different genres.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Themselves in one song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think for the EP that we recorded, some of them have a kind of a funk sound. Some of them have one of them has almost like an 80s ballad kind of vibe to it, depending on the part of the song, because maybe towards the end of the song it might not sound like that at all.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of variety within those 5 songs as well.
When did you guys go from having a number of songs that you guys would play live to making the jump to, we're going to record this, we're going to put this out?
Good question. I mean, we had the opportunity to record one of our live shows, and it was just really fun to listen to it and have that moment captured. And we had a sound guy there, so it was like a professional mix, and it was great. And then we were just like, basically, hey, what about those other songs? we want to hear those again. It was just kind of like wanted to capture it for ourselves, and also like to try to see how far we can go, like to see what kind of gigs we might get, or what kind of, so I almost think of it like as a demo tape, to be just like, hey, book us at your thing. Here's what we sound like. So, not necessarily to try to sell it or like do anything other than capture the songs for ourselves and then just maybe like use it to land. I'm interested in, we play all sorts of strange gigs, and I'm happy to play anywhere kind of, and just interested in seeing if we can like level up a little bit in the type of audience or the type of venue, and just thought that, having a solid EP would be a good way to get that out there.
Well, in terms of the First Friday jams, I recorded almost all of them just with my iPhone, right? Like try to position the microphone somewhere where it made sense. And sometimes it sounded really good.
Yeah.
Like whatever the position was, it made sense. And plus, when I had all my paintings in here, it didn't have this echo.
Yeah.
The acoustics were really good in this room for those just like very basic recordings. And I think, and then I would send the recordings to everybody. Hey, this is what we did. And so it was one part, trying to document what we did, and then one part from my memory, so that way I could listen back and pick up on try to replicate it somewhat, or at least have a similar baseline the next time. So those recordings, we would send them out, and it's like, minute 3 on whatever. Like, that's like that. We were on fire right there. We're like, yeah, we were on fire, man. So we would share these recordings. So I think just by way of having those recordings and listening back. I mean, maybe you never listened back to them, but I would listen back. I was going to say, I never listened to any of those recordings.
It's very satisfying because in the moment you do kind of lose yourself. And then to be able to come back to it a day, a week, whatever, a month later, and just listen to it and be like, oh, man, we captured something really cool right there. So I love that you are very good about documenting all the, archiving all the jams. So, yeah, I love it. It's a really cool feeling to be able to, I mean, sometimes I'm self-critical going back and listening to my stuff. I'm like, oh, why did I play that? But other times when it hits good, it's really satisfying to hear and just like, listen to it again. So yeah, just sort of like, somewhat of just like a tool to promote ourselves or whatever, but somewhat just to capture it for ourselves. Just like you want to capture any moment that is meaningful to you to revisit later.
Now, where did you guys record the EP at?
So it's called Over Under Recording. It's in Allentown. It's like Josh Miskornick is his name, the engineer. Josh? We have a lot of friends in common. He plays with that band Pale Fang, and Tom, who's in Fictional Name with me. Tom recorded his EP there with Raid. Tom's in the band Raid, and those recordings sounded so cool. And Tom just had and the Pale Fang record sounds awesome. And Tom and Dan and those guys just had really good things to say about working with Josh. So we were like, yeah, let's get in there. And it cracks me up because it's that building that says Permanent Odor Removal Incorporated on the outside in that part of Allentown. We were just like, it's such a funny old, I don't know, commercial building or whatever that's called, industrial building. But he, and some other artists working there. It has a similar vibe kind of to like the Banana Factory space. Josh is just a really patient and like knowledgeable sound dude. And so, yeah, we just really spent just a couple of days in there. We did most of the tracking live. Bryan was in Dubai or something the one day. He came in and did a lot of overdubs. It sounds like he was in the room. I think it's mixed really well. And he's just had, like I said, he's such a good feel and a good ear. And then Doug's son came in and played the cowbell. Dom's son came in and we made him play something. And then Al came in and added percussion, and we went and, I was able to go in with Josh and just like mix and try a couple different takes on things. And yeah, he was awesome. It was like really unbelievable to me, like working with a good engineer, sound guy. Like they're like wizards to me. Like the stuff he could do is like unbelievable and so fast and so solid. And, kind of always like we like in the beginning I was just trying to explain to him like kind of what we're after like on certain songs, I was like, this song's kind of like a reggae song, but they're screaming. And I was like, this song's kind of like Frank Zappa if he was like really sad. I was giving him like the weirdest direction, and he was just like, okay, got it, yep, got it. And then we're just like, yeah, this is like, Allman Brothers 74, like picture that. And he's like, okay.
Yeah, Josh is a sweet guy. He actually stopped in my studio before this whole recording. It was like maybe a year before we decided to record with him. I was having a painting day. I think it was a first Friday, and I was here during the day, and he had stopped through, and we were talking about equipment, and then I kind of forgot about him for a while until he's like, oh, we're gonna record. We actually had a gig. The reason we actually recorded the album to begin with was because we had a gig that got canceled, and it so happened that we were all still available. So Josh Berk reached out to Josh about recording on that particular day, and he was available, and it worked out quite well because I feel like, day one, it was Josh, myself, Shaun, Dom, and I, and we just recorded like one after the next. I don't even think we went back and recorded much over top of. I mean, the vocals,
maybe
yes.
One song, yeah.
But it was Not that it was just one take, but it was definitely like within 5 hours, I think we had it all. Like
5 songs, yeah.
5 songs there, yeah.
Which is rare. Yeah, a lot of bands like to, multi-track, like basically record track by track, like you record the drums and you record but we just really wanted to record live. Like we really wanted to be in the room together, and that's like really how we play, is like playing off of one another. So we really just sort of like played it like we were playing it live. And then, yeah, you're able to go back and fix a couple things here or there and then add layers and overdubs and that kind of stuff. It was like a rain stick that we just thought was like hilarious.
Yeah.
I kept playing with because I'm a child. And then we put it on one of the tracks. We kind of had to.
I've been distracted by rain sticks on many occasions.
Okay, good. It's not just me. Why are they so fun? This was like the greatest rain stick. It would go for so long. So fun.
It's still raining.
It's still going.
Doug, was that your first time seeing the recording through final mixing of a track?
Yes.
What was that like to experience?
I think several of us, it was probably the first time recording professionally. I'm not sure if Dom had recorded
No, because
prior.
Dom kept saying that every time he looked down and saw a microphone in front of his drums, it would freak him out. Because you get in the groove playing, and you just feel like you're playing in your house, or and then you look and there's all these mics, and he said he would like freeze up a little bit because you're just like, oh man, there's all these microphones pointed at me. So he'd never been in a studio like that before.
Yeah, and playing with headphones on and hearing it through there versus trying to simulate live playing, but still, it was quite different than what I'm accustomed to, at least. But and then hearing it through the process of mastering. He would send us like, I worked on these files for a bit, check them out, listen and let me know. And then, of course, comparing them just to the iPhone recordings, right? like that sounds so much better than my iPhone recordings. But you were talking about being self-critical, right? And I feel like because it was so crisp, I'm like, I think that sounds like me playing bass. There's actually one section I'm trying to accuse Josh of playing bass on one of the sections. That doesn't sound like me. Is someone else playing bass?
I really don't think it was someone else. I do play bass also, but I did not play bass on this record. I promise. And you always hear stuff that no one else would hear when it's yourself.
Yeah.
Like no one else would ever notice.
Right.
And when it's you, you're just... It is funny because on the one hand, I love listening to us, and I'm just like, oh, this is so great. Like, I'm so proud of us. And other times I cringe because I'm just like, does no one notice I hit the totally wrong note there? But no one, of course. So anyway, anytime you're listening to something you yourself created, it's a strange experience. It's good to give it a little bit of time. Rest your ears. That's what they always say. You got to let your ears rest and then come back.
Yeah. From a musician perspective, I think it's understandable to see and hear how bands transition from recording to live, especially in a jam band setting, going from shorter to longer versions of the songs. But Josh, for you as a vocalist, what does that difference in length as it pertains to the vocals look or sound like?
Most of the songs have basically a structure of just like sing for a bit and then don't sing for a bit.
Okay.
And so then, like, they're not that structured, but there's at least that much structure that it can be like, okay, so here's the instrumental part of the song. And that can go on for, 12 bars or 100 bars, depending on how we're feeling. And sometimes I'll just step back from the mic and let Bryan start taking a solo or and then we'll just through eye contact or whatever, or through the drums or Doug and Dom together, the rhythm section will sort of like bring it back to the main theme. And then I'll be like, okay, this is where the verse starts again. So yeah, I'm not a good singer. Like I'm not doing like vocal improvisations. I'm just like sort of like barking out my lines and then stepping back and then letting musicians take it for the jam as long as they want to. And myself too. I play guitar too. So I'm like, sometimes just stretching the jam out on guitar, and sometimes just stepping back.
I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the art design of the band and the project. Doug, it looks like your fingerprints are all over it.
Some of it, but some of it not so much. So I designed the logo, the concentric circles. That's like something I've been obsessed with. It's part of my art making. Planet Infamy circle. I mean, like it feels like it makes sense. Mm-hmm. I had done the art on the front of the drum, and of course, one of my basses has that concentric circle motif as well. But Josh actually designs all of our, all of our flyers, actually.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a visual artist by any stretch, but I'm a dabbler.
Yeah.
And I like to repurpose like strange images. I use a lot of I've been using a lot of there's all these archives of out of copyright, free to use illustrations from all sorts of sources, or from ancient medical texts, or we used a bunch from old science fiction illustrations, from science fiction books from however long ago that they're out of copyright now. So I just thought that was a fun vibe. The band name Planet Infamy really was from a lyric that I had written. I had written the line, "You had it in for me," and then I rhymed that with Planet Infamy, and it didn't exactly make sense, but I was but it does sound like a band name. So so we just kept that, and then it I think that did sort of inform a little bit of the art direction, because it sounds like maybe some old sci-fi novel or something, and so I started using some of those old illustrations on the flyers and stuff. The concentric circles, was that on the drum head first before it was the logo? I don't remember.
I think it was on the drum first.
So Doug took some. How'd you make it?
It was the same way I'm doing with my paintings. I'll do a thin layer of paint on a glass surface, and then go in with different circle forms, lids of different things, and kind of build up the concentric circles that way. But I mean, Planet Infamy, I remember we were oh, we need a name now, and I think we were we went back and forth very little. It was very little back and forth in terms of
most bands, there's a lot.
Yeah, it's I've tried to start other bands before. It's how about this? How about that? No, it's to this, it's to that, And Josh was how about Planet Infamy? I'm yeah, let's do that. That sounds great. I love that name.
And we like the idea that the planet is because there's a lot of us.
Yes.
And it comes and goes. Sometimes we'll be it's the full planet.
Yes.
It'll be it's just a collective, we like to call it, as much as a band. It's just a group of people. Some are, and our lives are so busy, and our, some, we were saying, Bryan travels half the time. And so it's something about that phrase, I don't know, association that just made sense to us.
Yeah, we could technically perform a show as a trio, and we've done it before. But if the full planet's available, that's when it's a big special event, when there's 7 of us, or, I could even imagine, having a saxophone player sit in at some point, during one of our jams.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Porch Fest.
Porch Fest was that our first show? No, our first show was at the cemetery.
I think
played some weird gigs.
And Shaun was on drums for that one.
Drums. Porch Fest the local Porch Fest is in Easton, is in the College Hill neighborhood. Basically, bands play on porches, and it's all volunteer run. The organizers draw up this map. They assign different bands to different porches in the neighborhood, and then the audience just walks from place to place and experiences different bands. And some of the hosts get super into it and put out bar carts and hot dogs and grills and and it's a thing that a lot of different cities have around the country, I think. And but Easton's is the one that's locally kind of really taken off, and that neighborhood up by Lafayette is really cool. And we played. It was one of our first gigs. We're going to do it again this year. And everyone volunteers their time, and at the end they do what's that called? A second line, a parade, with the musicians all kind of march through, and that Easton brass band that they play. They do sort of a New Orleans style a procession through the neighborhood, and so, it's a pretty cool thing. There's I forget how many. I think they said there's 70 performers this year, maybe. And most locations will have 2 bands, so there's 30 different. 35 different porches that each have and these guys have to put together the map and the schedule and the it's a neat thing. Like it's a fun. I love it as a musician. It's super fun just to walk around and see the other stuff, and also just to play in the unique location.
Do you guys have any highlights playing live? Any favorite venues that you guys have played together?
Flying V, over here on the South Side, is had so many cool bands, and every musician I talked to has said the same kind of thing, which is why does it sound so good in there? It's not designed as a music space.
It's compact, I think. The ceilings are kind of low.
It's an old building.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fry grease in the air, I think helps. That everyone I know who plays there, including us, it's just it sounds so good in there. We got, that's actually where we've recorded our live stuff, and that was one of the best. I really love playing outside. We've played outside a bunch of different places. We played outside here at the Banana Factory. We played at at the Easton Historic Cemetery. We're doing that again this year. We played at City Park. And I love those outdoor shows.
I think the best is yet to come, though. That's what I'm feeling. That's the vibe I'm catching right now. Yeah. We've definitely played some cool gigs. We also played at a different art center called 1120. In Easton. That was probably one of my personal favorite shows because lots of artists were around and musicians, and a band called Bombs Eat Sharks opened for us, and Dave and Zach are amazing. So
that was really cool.
It was definitely one of the cooler shows where we didn't have 1 million people show up, but it was definitely part of the vibe of the evening.
And people were dancing.
Yeah, people were dancing.
We like it when
really
people
cool.
dance. I've never been in a band where people dance to
it. That was at the last 1120 open house?
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And that's where Al's studio is now, right?
Yeah. So Al played with us that night as well. So it was definitely a good time.
That's super fun.
Yeah.
I have mentioned this before in regards to the Flying V, but one of the things that I really enjoy about it is it's a venue where the concerts can start later at night, but minors can get in because it's not a bar.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate when local venues allow that to happen, because I think that,
that's a good point.
The younger folks also deserve the music, and giving them a place to experience that is always a win in my mind.
And they have those jazz jams there too, where you can come play. And a lot of jazz players, there's a lot of students who are jazz players.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of venues or bars, and they're by students, I mean high school students. It's they can't ever get in there. So that is really cool. They've really opened up fun space for live music.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we've mentioned that we're sitting in your studio, Doug, or what used to be or used to resemble your studio, and now it is empty. Why is it empty, and why are you moving on from here?
Well, the Banana Factory is going to get a major upgrade, essentially. So they're going to be demolishing the building going into the new year. All the artists need to be out by the end of December, maybe a little bit in January as well. There might be a little bit of a lag, but I needed a space. So I found another space roughly the same size, the same cost. So I moved out a little bit earlier than some of the other artists. A lot of the other artists are going to be going to another arts facility called Juxtahub. I know several of them are going to be moving out. So they're going to wait it out until the very end and then make their transition.
Yeah.
But not only did I find a space that's the same size and similar cost, it's also very close to my house. So I have a lot of other responsibilities, family, work, still painting and obviously working on our band here. So the proximity just made more sense for me to continue to be able to make art, and I'm sure we'll be jamming there as well. Sure. New spot. So I started cleaning it out. It's 7 years of accumulation, and it took a while to get to this level of emptiness here.
Yeah, and archival art storage is not lightweight either.
Right. Yeah. My brother and I moved the flat files, the infamous the green flat files that were probably from the World War II era. Yeah, and even just, again, going through, like now you have to go through all your art that's in your inventory, and I had all the posters and everything, so you can't exactly relocate that stuff in the flat file, so I had to go through all of it. So a little bit of memory lane kind of thing, but yeah, I'm out for sure. In fact, I'm going to be turning my key in the moment I leave this building today.
Wow. So this is the send-off right now.
This is it, yes.
Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with me today.
No, it was
Thank you.
our pleasure.
Planet Infamy's debut EP, Forever, was released on streaming services in August of 2024 and can be found on all streaming services. You can follow them on Instagram at Planet Infamy. In addition, they have 3 upcoming concerts, one on March 8th, 2025, at Soft Machine Gallery with Bombs Eat Sharks in Allentown, PA, another one on March 14th, 2025, at Godfrey Daniels in Bethlehem, PA, and lastly, one on May 3rd, 2025, at 1120 Art Studios in Easton, PA. Follow them on Instagram for more information about these upcoming shows. Thanks for listening. Finishing out today's episode is Planet Infamy's song, Forever.
Your way, I said mine. I guess we mean different things when we say we're doing fine. You say it your way, I just think my way is better. I guess we mean different things when we say forever. When we say forever. When we say forever. You say it your way, I say it mine. I guess we mean different things when we say we're doing starts to feel like everything's impossible. Everything's lost. Once you begin, it gets harder and harder to stop. Starts to feel like everything's impossible. Like everything's lost. once you begin, open up your mouth and let the poison in. You say it your way, I just think my way is better. I guess we mean different things when we say forever.